So how are things? How are you?
Yeah, good. Just like decompressing from the trip and yeah.
All right, very nice. I know I'm getting back from fight week as well, and always like gets you a little bit, like takes it out of you when you return home.
Yeah, for sure.
So good fun though. But how was it overall? I mean, I saw you had some what kind of travel issues getting back, right?
Yeah, my corner got stuck at the border, but
Oh no.
yeah, I guess, I mean, it could have been worse, could have been like before the fight. So,
Right.
after that win, it was like very little could have, brought me down. So it's just sort of having to adapt to, have booking new flights, and it ended up being awesome because we just spent a day in San Diego.
Yeah, there you go. It's maybe better than I don't know if it was
Yeah.
in Sinaloa. How was it there? Everyone talks about, the cartel and everything.
Yeah, that's what they were saying. No, it was fine. It was like, I mean, we didn't really go leave the hotel anyway.
Right.
It was like hotel venue.
Yeah. So they were kind of pretty strict there with stuff, or how was the process?
With what exactly?
Just like, I don't know, restrictions, were they conscious about COVID stuff or like anything like that?
Hard to say. Like we were at the hotel and then venue, and then there's a mall next to us, so we went there, and it was like people wore masks and stuff.
Ah, right.
But
All
I
right.
didn't really get to see much of the city. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're there for a reason and, got the job done. So congratulations on, the win, of course. Um, was the fight outside too? I noticed that I think they've done that before, but it looks like open venue,
Yeah, it
right?
was almost like it reminded me of Thailand. Like I showed up and I looked at the ring, and I was like, it just seems so familiar to me. I think that was like a big advantage, like kind of
Yeah.
small ring, like in the middle of this sort of, like it had like an overhead cover, but it was still technically outdoors.
Hmm.
It was really hot, which was great because, you don't really have to do much to warm up. Um, yeah, it was obviously not your typical like, octagon and like this arena
Yeah.
type of deal, but I think the sort of casual nature ended up helping because then it's like, oh, this isn't, I don't need to be, it's like less pressure in a
Right.
way. There are also like 30 people in the stands, so
Yeah, not the worst kind of platform to return on and still televised and all that kind of thing. So yeah,
mhm.
I can see how that would be maybe less stressful than it would have been if you were, let's say, to come right back into the UFC or something like that.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly.
Good to get the feet wet a little bit. But iKON though, and just how were they working with them? Kind of new still. What, this was their seventh event, so um
Yeah, they're
yeah.
fantastic actually. They were really helpful. They were really nice. Um, yeah, I think everything just like went really smoothly. Weigh-in started on time. That's always a thing, right? Everyone's kind of dying. I think they had started a little bit earlier actually. Um, Yeah, no complaints. I think just the fact that it was in Sinaloa, Mexico was just a little bit, it was more difficult logistically,
Right.
to get there. It was like either a 6 hour drive down to the border of Tijuana or 6.5 hours, or like a flight over to San Diego and then a drive to the border and then another flight from there, Tijuana to Sinaloa. International travel is always a bit more stressful,
Yeah.
with like, just at the airport and everything. Um, but other than that, it was fine. It was, they handled the whole event really well, and yeah, no complaints.
Yeah, very cool. Was that your first time in Mexico then?
No, I think it was like my third time. Like I went ages ago when I was still in college, like
Right.
for pleasure, obviously, but first time in a very long time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I didn't really get to see much of it, unfortunately, because it
Mm.
was just, we were just at the hotel most of the time. But it was interesting. Like the climate really reminds me, and like kind of the vibe of the place reminds me of the Philippines where my family is from. So like it wasn't too different, I think, from what I'm used to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as for the fight itself, though, you got the job done in 2 minutes, 50 seconds, which, like, obviously that's great. You want a fight that's quicker, but, that's like enough. Was that enough time, you would say, to kind of feel like, I don't know, when you come back after the layoff, do you want to show a little bit more, but like That's a pretty good spot. You know, it's pretty quick, but
Yeah.
not too long.
I think there's so many different ways the fight could have gone. And I had options just because I'd been so prepared. You know, we've been working on a lot of stuff on the ground, obviously that top pressure. We've been working on a lot of striking, footwork, head movement, and some just really simple combinations. And I think the nature of this fight was sort of to get me back in there, you know, and my opponent was debuting. And obviously, like I'd seen a clip of her TKOing this other girl, you know, in an amateur, you know, bout. So it's like I never had any amateur fights. So then I was thinking, well, perhaps like we have the same, you know, in terms of like MMA fight experience. She could have fought maybe 5 times as an amateur, and that would have been more or less the same as like my pro. Um, but yeah, I basically, you know, on paper it was like I was supposed to win, and so I kind of thought, you know, I could sort of like take risks and, you know, kind of open up a little bit and then show my toolbox, but at the same time I also wanted a decisive win and like leave no doubt, and perhaps just my first fight back into the scene, you know, kind of make a statement and just seal it and not leave, you know, anything up for interpretation.
Yeah.
So I think I had sort of expected her to rush me because that was what I saw in like the short clip that I got of her. But then I kind of felt like she was kind of tentative. And so I thought, you know, then now I need to be the aggressor. And yeah, I knew that I wanted to get her, you know, with my knees. I just needed to close that distance. So I went for that inside leg kind of sweep. Clinched up, kneed her, stretch her to the ground. And then, yeah, I knew that as soon as I got on top of her, I'd be able to weather her down with my top pressure. And then hopefully, if the chance came, you know, be able to attack some submissions. And that's basically what happened.
Yeah. And do you find more satisfaction in a submission win or a knockout, or you just take it whatever comes?
Oh, I just take it. That was my first submission actually
Yeah.
in a fight. So, you know, it's kind of nice to have that, you know,
Yeah.
variety, I think. And I think it's also like, I didn't want to, you know, you don't really, I get another opportunity to show like my other skills in like later fights. You know, I kind of don't want to throw everything in one fight,
yeah,
and everyone's just studying me, right?
Exactly.
So it's like if I can finish it as quickly as I can, like, you know, I'm ultimately going to do that. And then yeah, I mean, eventually, you know, you know, the competition is just going to get more challenging from here on out.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what you want anyways. So yeah, it worked out pretty well. Looked great out there. Good to have you back in action. You know, it was a while. And it's funny, Ramona, when we met in person in Jacksonville, you know, since then I followed you a little bit closer on Instagram, and like you're so professional in these atmospheres, but you have a lot of fun outside and like training and everything, especially with your team now, JoJo. You guys, great mustaches, by the way, that you can pull off.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, you got a great mustache too. I think we could be in a club.
Yeah, there we go. So.
Yeah, they've been great. I think it's, you know, being in the right environment makes such a big difference, right? And surrounding yourself with the right people, teammates, coaches, you know, knowing that I'm at the right place to develop in the way that I want to develop or I need to develop to make it in the sport. Just, you know, makes it's like, then, you know, you're still doing hard work, but then you don't want to suffer more than you should. And so the mindset is, you know, enjoy the process. How many more fight camps are you going to actually have? You know, fight camps are hard, but it's like things will happen, injury, you know, like pandemic, like, you know, so many things, right? And unknown, and fights drop out and things happen to people, and you never really know how many fights you have, you know, for the rest of your career. So I think you just gotta, learn to love the process, even like the hard parts. And that's the only way I think you can keep pushing forward and, you know, actually face these challenges head on.
Right. Is that something too that like you didn't realize till, you know, maybe especially more recently, having, you know, been able to work with people like JoJo and your team and have this great synergy? But like I asked her too, like how important it is to have some fun, like, you know, before these big stressful moments, because, you know, fighting's fairly stressful, right? So
Yeah,
the importance of that.
100%. I think our suffering and a lot of like the overdoing it comes from a place of insecurity, you know, thinking that we need to do more, that we haven't done enough, that this one extra session is gonna, you know, help us win the fight or whatever. And it's kind of in human nature, right? To think that like more is more. And not saying that, you know, we're like resting all the time. Like obviously we push really hard, but it's like, it gets to a point where like you're training, it's the diminishing returns, right? You're hurting yourself more than you're helping yourself. So finding that balance, and it's different for everyone, right? Some people can handle more volume, some people need more recovery. But yeah, it's just really important to, you know, be in a good headspace for fight camps.
Yeah, and I imagine you're one of those people who maybe a lot of people seem to, as especially as time has gone on, consider MMA a bit more of a mental sport than physical. Of course, you need both, right? But in terms
Yeah,
of
I
the
think
balance there.
right, exactly. I think when I was like younger, so like when I was first starting off, my first 4 fights, you know, or as you kind of alluded to, like I wasn't always like this. I was more of like I gotta be as aggressive as possible. You gotta be like a abused dog when you get out there. You know, you gotta kind of gain as much hate or generate as much hate as you can, and then like channel that towards your opponent. And that's one way to do it. And I think, you know, perhaps that way works for certain people, but it's kind of an exhausting way to do it. And it's definitely not enjoyable,
Right.
you know? And so I think over the years and over, you know, having to test my patience and like, you know, develop my mindset because of all the layoffs that I've had due to injury, due to COVID, this and that, I've really been able to take the time to really figure out where I want my career to go and what kind of fighter I'll be and why I do what I do and what I hope to get out of it ultimately. Because, you know, your fight career is, you know, a few years, like it's not even like 10% of your life, right?
Yeah.
And so you're kind of thinking like, how am I going to use this, you know, to better myself and not looking past my career, but you know, if you make your career the only thing in your life, the end all be all, I think that's just a lot of pressure that you're putting on yourself that ultimately gets in the way of your performance when the pressure is on.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. And I think we've seen, you know, multiple cases of that with you know, certain people, not to name any names, of course, but just as for working with JoJo though, like how has that
Sure,
been?
yeah. It's been fantastic, you know, getting to witness her process and see the things that she goes through and be able to relate to that, you know, to a certain degree, but also just, you know, see the intensity that she brings to the gym, like the and like the quality of the train and the mindset and the approach has been just great, you know, because to see, because you most of the time you see these people when they're in the octagon, right, and you judge them by what they do in there, and you assume that they're working hard, but you don't really see all the things that they go through. So it's just it's inspiring, you know, to see how far she's come and the way that she is able to handle such a high pressure, you know, like such a big ticket fight, and be at that level of her career. So it's yeah, it's been nothing but beneficial.
Yeah, and yeah, did you get to see the fight? Because, you know, I was there as I mentioned, and like I thought it was kind of a lot closer maybe than, well, I guess it was a split decision, but I don't know. Just what did you think about it? It was a competitive one.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, you can just like read the comment section, right? Like it was. I mean, yeah, I watched it on. We were in San Diego, and we went to a bar just to go catch it. And I mean, she won the first and third rounds. Like, I don't feel like it was like there was any question. Like, sure, she lost that second round because of the wrestling, but I don't know. I'm not a judge, so I don't know. But I just thought that you judge it based on like, you know, the rounds that you win. Maybe you don't. Maybe that's just not how judging
Yeah.
works, you know? Then it is what it is. That's shitty. But yeah, it just sucks. It sucks to see someone work so hard and do all the right things, come up short and like the score, because, you know, it's, yeah, ultimately it's sort of so many things are out of your hands. And then, you know, I have no doubt she's going to bounce back, and that'll be another inspirational thing to witness.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, she's proven it time and time again just to get back on the horse, as they say, right after
That's
you know,
right.
the roller coaster that is MMA in general. But it's interesting, Ramona, too. Last time that we did catch up, and I asked you about the PI in Shanghai, which I know you get asked about a lot. But now, having had time to work at the Vegas one, you know, a lot, how do you kind of, is there a big difference between the two? And I know that
Yeah.
just how would
Yeah.
you describe it?
Yeah. It's a big difference. Well, because the one in the PI has like an MMA coaching staff.
Right.
So they, you know, it's a one-stop shop where like you get your MMA, nutrition, S&C, everything's there. Whereas over here, it's just the S&C, nutrition, you know, physiotherapy, and your MMA training has to be done elsewhere. So which is why I'm a syndicate. So there's a lot more structure in Shanghai and a lot more overall support, I think, in the way that they act in sort of a cohesive unit.
Right.
So it's like over there, everything's just like this, your schedule's there for you. Like you just show up and you just like, you know, do your training, recovery, like you eat your meals there, like everything is just there. So you're there from like more, you know, 7:30 to 7:30 in the morning until 7:30 at night. Whereas over here, it's like I only go when I have an S&C session or to pick up my food, you know, or if I want to do recovery. And I don't spend that much time there. And there are some days that I'm not even there. So
Right.
it's just a little different.
It's more of a lab in Shanghai, right?
Yeah, kind of. And like everyone's training together. Like you train with all your teammates. You're doing S&C with together.
Mhm.
You're doing the MMA stuff together. Whereas over here, like I do S&C on my own because it's just like one-on-one with a coach. And then, yeah, so there's a lot more moving parts, I think, over here that don't, you know, that I kind of have to just like regulate on my own. Whereas over there, it was kind of done for you.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting to look at both of them. And it's been kind of frustrating too to I don't know if you've seen any of this online, but people like questioning the Shanghai PI's,
Yeah.
you know, worth, I guess, after, you know, Chinese athletes have
Yeah.
had a
I
rough
mean,
start, but yeah, it
it's tough
happens.
because if for Chinese fight, like usually, you know, obviously, you know, the UFC goes into certain markets. They sign fighters from certain regions to develop that market. So these fighters that were signed were supposed to be fighting in Asia, you know? And so if you're flying from Shanghai to Singapore, that's like a what, 3-hour flight, you know? It's like not that big a deal. They had to they had to travel 48 hours to get to Florida. You know, it was like 4 flights, like a stopover in Korea and then stopover in San Francisco, stopover in like Dallas, I think. I guess like there are fighters that do this often too, but you know, it's like they're debuting and it takes a toll, and then you have to deal with, you know, the time difference, and not to make any excuses, but you know, it was just not to make excuses. That wasn't the reason they lost, right? But it was also just it was difficult because if it wasn't for COVID, like circumstances would have been a little different, I think. Um, but yeah, I mean, definitely rough start, and hopefully they can, you know, come back later this year.
Yeah, and you know, I wanted to ask you about that too. Like, unfortunately, Liang Na was a part of that, and you know, we talked about her last time too. And great fight though, fantastic fight to open up that card. But you know, just how'd she handle the loss? Seemed like she took it pretty well from what I'd seen.
Yeah, I mean, she has a lot of fighting experience. Like, she's got a very extensive record. She's been there before. She perhaps hasn't fought like a war like that before,
Mhm.
with that was so like jacked up and so much energy in the room. You know, UFC debut against someone that was so physically strong. But yeah, she just definitely, the first thing she said, she was like, because we had to go to the hospital just to get a check,
Yeah,
and she was just like immediately was like, I should have stood with her. Like she was immediately just like going through the fight, like being so like self-critical, you know,
hmm
because she's a grappler and the whole game plan was to grapple, and so she was like quite cemented into that game plan because all she did was like drill that game plan. And so I think there was like not so much thinking in the moment to adjust things,
right.
because it was also just such a hectic environment, right? So I mean, she dropped her with that too
Yeah,
in the first 3 seconds, and
right away.
I think she had a longer reach, and I think she would have done very well standing, and she, you know, after the fight also said that, made that point. But, you know, it's a learning experience. So she's like 24 years old, like,
Yeah.
you know, so much more. It's, yeah, she's only going to get better from there.
Yeah. It may be just a little bit of an autopilot situation with just the environment, like you were saying, right? So, and speaking of that, like, what have you thought of like the criticism that kind of Weili's gotten? Because she's talked a lot about the environment specifically and people saying it's excuses she's making, but she's saying, well, I'm admitting, you know, I lost and all that, but people are really running with it in a different direction.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like when Americans go to like Brazil and fight, right? And the
Very
crowd's like,
true.
"You're gonna die, you're gonna die." Like it, if you've never experienced that, it'll definitely get to you. You know, if you're not used to it, and like being a Chinese fighter, you're fighting probably mostly in China or places in Asia where stuff like that would never happen because the fans at the end of the day just aren't as spirited, and that could be a cultural thing. But then you come over to the US. I mean, if you go to like American football games, you know, like where rivalry is really high, like people are like, you know, people hate on,
It
you
gets
know,
gets
Tom
nasty
Brady, right?
in
They're like
football
telling him
games.
what they're gonna do to his family, and like they're gonna kill him and all this stuff. And like that's just something that he gets used to, but they just like fans are just being fans. Whereas I think you're just getting people from a region or a country that aren't used to that at all.
Right.
And so when you kind of put them in there, like, you know, fans start drinking, you're by the main event, they're like wasted, they're like, you know, saying all kinds of things. And it's post COVID. So they've been
Yeah.
locked up like all year. And now they get to like get out there and they're just like, you know, hungry dogs, right? For like action and entertainment. So I would be, you know, it would mess me up. You know, I've never experienced that. I've never had people walked out to people just like attacking me, you know, with their words and like just for the spectacle of it all.
Right.
So, you know, I really sympathize with her because like obviously she's not making excuses, but I can sympathize with the fact that that did affect her mindset somewhat because if you've never experienced it, you don't know what that's like, you know. I think here in America, American sports are just such a bigger deal than sports are in Asia. And so the fans are a lot more enthusiastic. And that's like without a doubt. So it's like you could have, you know, two American teams fighting each other, but or not fighting, but playing against each other, but they're rivals and like they're going to get really aggressive towards each other, right? Especially, you
Yeah.
know, in the stands. So, I mean, yeah, I guess it is what it is. You know, I hope like the races, you know, it's always like USA, right? USA
Hmm.
versus whoever. If it had been like a Russian fighter, it would have been like, oh, USA versus Russia, things like that. And not to like defend the crowd if there are any racists in the, you know, in the crowd, you know, they deserve far worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just, I don't know. Sports is like that. Like you're going to walk out to some, you know, rowdy people, especially here in America.
Yeah. I think a lot of places kind of have their own, I guess, unique
Sure, right? South
flair.
America, yeah, South
Right.
America are like really spirited too, right? And like in Europe, like
Yes.
football,
Yeah, crazy.
European football, yes, unreal.
They get in fights before the games even start.
Right, exactly. And like I can tell you that just doesn't happen in Asia. It's just not a thing, you know? So that's I can understand how that would have like rattled her a bit.
Yeah. So another learning experience, right? That's just pretty much what you could take away from those kind of things. But back to you, Ramona. Like this fight that you just had, you know, up at 145 again. Your last two fights before this were bantamweight fights. Are you looking to go back down now, or are you going to try and stay around
Yeah.
145? What's the idea?
No, I definitely want to get down to 135. I don't know because this last one was sort of like semi short notice, and I was in Florida for like God knows how long.
Right.
So, so yeah, we decided to just go with like 145, and then the next one should be at 35. So I'm hoping sometime in July. I have no idea when.
Hmm.
But if not July, then obviously August. But you know, trying to just get another one straight away, just because the momentum's built. I'm not injured, and I'm still, you know, it's sort of like while I have that win, that recent win to get back in there. It's just like easier because a lot of promotions are like, well, she hasn't fought in a while, we don't know and how she's gonna look and all this stuff, and that was part of the reason why I wanted to just like finish early, and like really like put the nail in the coffin on that one because I wanted people to like see that, wow, like she's that 2 minutes, this is what we get, and wasn't much, but it just signifies the potential.
Yeah, definitely. And just weight cutting is that's the worst part. So make it easier on yourself to ease back into that before.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, definitely for like contender series and stuff like that, like I'd definitely be with 35. There's no way I'd be with 45.
Well, yeah, I mean, they don't know if they'd have anyone for you in that case.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother road to go down. But I'm fascinated too a little bit by your background, Ramona. I've seen your TED Talk that you did, which was very cool to see, by the way. What was that, 2018?
Yeah.
And you grew up in Hong Kong, right? So I'm just curious though, because you're very well spoken, obviously able to do a TED Talk, but your English and everything, and I imagine you do know Mandarin because of working with Liang Na and all the other Chinese fighters. But like, what's kind of the story on your background, I suppose, in terms of have you lived in America at all before now, or no? How's your English so good, I guess?
Yeah, no, yeah, I get that a lot. I grew up in Hong Kong, so in the international school system. So, everything's taught in English. And then when you have your like languages, that's Mandarin or French or whatever. And then usually kids from international schools then go off to like Australia or the UK or the US for college. And so, my friends and I kind of just dispersed like that. And then a bunch of us did go to come to the US. So I lived in the US for 4 years when I was in college, but then I moved straight back home right afterwards and sort of like been in Asia ever since.
Okay. That's really cool though, kind of getting that opportunity through school. Like I can't imagine having that. That'd be great. That'd be really cool. So
Yeah, because we had like they're either English schools. It was either the English school system or there's one school that did the American system with the APs and stuff. So yeah, they had just had like it was an international sort of.
Okay. Very awesome. And I did mention the TED Talk, and you kind of the theme of it was you speaking about fear, right? And how that holds people back a lot. And
yeah,
did you have fear going to do that? Because, and how did that come together even to do a TED Talk? Like those are always cool things I think to see people do. But just tell me about doing that a little bit. What was that like?
Yeah. No, I think the point I was trying to make was everything is driven by fear. And then, the idea was to channel that in a positive way because you can never really get rid of a feeling of fear. You can just get familiar with it and use it to your advantage. I mean, I think everyone deals with that, but specifically I grew up pretty timid and shy. I was really shy. Not too sure why, but lacking self-confidence and all that. But it was like, sports was always an avenue where I could express myself that I really enjoyed, that I wasn't really good at, from the get-go. Like I wasn't naturally athletic or naturally skilled at like whatever sports I was playing, but I was interested enough in it and sort of, I would connect to the challenge in a way. Like it would be like a challenge that I'm willing to go through to see where my limits were and like get past those limits and then gain confidence in that way. So sports was a way for me to gain confidence. And then that's what kind of opened me up a little bit. And then as I continued on, like as I, like I said, I was shy. So I hated doing presentations. I hated speaking. Like I freaking hated it. And I think then I realized, well, that I have a fear with that. So I need to like, try to conquer that fear and figure that out and try to address that. And so through fighting has helped me gain the confidence to then approach speaking and try to see how I can improve in that aspect as well. So when I first had the opportunity to apply for that TED Talk to get chosen, I was like, well, I can't do this right now. Like, there's no way I can possibly do this right now. But if I sign up and then it's all confirmed and I have a date set, like, I'm going to go through the process. Like, I trust myself enough that I'm going to like feel enough pressure to have to get to a point where I'll be ready to give that talk. And yeah, sure enough, like, that happened.
Yeah, it did. It was very good. I think you did very well, and you would never know, which is the really impressive part. Like, but I think, yeah, definitely, it was a great speech because of the fact that we do all deal with that in certain ways, and like, no matter how calm or collected you may look in that moment, you're like, yeah, she's probably freaking out a little bit heading into it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think you just have to, embrace it. Like, a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to wait until the moment I have no fear around it to then do it. But it's just about like having it and then being like, all right, it's there. Like, we're just going to jump, we're just going to take this leap. We're just going to go for it.
That's the thing, right? Overthinking will just destroy you. That's the worst.
Yeah, for sure.
Did you have any like idols or inspirations, people to look up to, like at that time? Was there anyone you were like, I kind of want to be like them? They really motivated you a little bit.
I think like every female fighter, looked up to Ronda Rousey at one point in time, just because she's the reason the women's division is a part of the UFC. So I remember the first time I watched Rousey Tate 1. I think it was that Strike Force one.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, it was like went viral, right? Because it was like that arm bar. And I watched that being like, damn, like, that's fucking, but internally, I didn't actually say this out loud, but I was internally like, damn, I want to fucking do that. That's like badass. And that was 2012, I think. And so it was many years until I decided to fight. It was like 5 years after that. But yeah, probably, I mean, yeah, just that really, because at the time, like, no one was doing what I was doing back home. I mean, no one is doing what I'm doing from Hong Kong. It's just tough to kind of make it in the sport over there. But yeah, I kind of just saw a few fighters that I really admired and I really enjoyed watching MMA. And then I just decided, well, I do Muay Thai, I do Jiu-Jitsu, like, I can do MMA.
Right.
And then like and then when I like lost consecutively, I was like, all right, I gotta learn how to wrestle. I gotta leave home because like this is not working out over here.
Yeah. It's funny how it plays out that way sometimes. um do you think that you ever would have got actually into doing it if it wasn't for the IMPI in Hong Kong? Had to be there, right?
Yeah, because like then where would I have competed? Maybe Singapore, or it was really hard to get fights. Like I remember like I was like asking a bunch of people who had promotions if they had any fights, whatever, but they're usually trying to bring up their regional fighters, their local fighters. And so it's like if it suits them, they'll have you on the card. If not, then like, they're not going to do that. So it was tough to get started. And also like after IMPI sort of closed out their doors, like, yeah, it was difficult. Also, like they just had less shows. And so I was sort of in a stalemate until like I got signed to Road, and then that sort of opened more doors for me.
Yeah, I mean, just how was it fighting for them? Because they're one of the more well-known, Korean promotions, of course.
Yeah, it was good. I spent like half a year in Korea. That was a cool experience. Like that was sort of a level up from Hong Kong, and then being like, oh wow, this is what MMA is, and then yeah, I learned a lot. Just I was so green at the time. And then fought once, and then I moved my camp to Phuket, and then learned even more there, and then Shanghai, and then now here. So it's sort of just each time I've moved, I've leveled up.
Yeah, and continue to see that with the recent win, Ramona, and could go on and on forever with you, but I don't want to keep you too long here. So I want to give you congratulations again, and just give you a fun little silly question before we close up here. So in terms of the enclosure for a fight, the cage, right? Would you rather, if you had to pick one, have an electric fence or a moat around the cage?
Oh,
because both of those things were considered for the UFC starting out. I'll let you know.
Moat. chances of like at least trying to scramble out of the moat if like I did fall into it, or like grab the side or something. But yeah, with electric fence, you're just fucked.
Yeah, I think I agree with that as well. But what if there were like some kind of animals in there?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe electric fence then. I mean, if there are like snakes, and like leeches in there, then probably the electric fence, because I wouldn't want to
Deal with
I
that.
wouldn't want to get in there with that.
Yeah, that's we're happy to have neither. So let's put it that way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Let's hope like the sport doesn't develop into that, some like doomsday kind of like situation.
Fight circus takes it to the next level right there.
Yeah, I mean they'd have to pay a lot more for that. That's for sure. Better
Yeah.
medical benefits.
Yeah, there's a lot that would go into that, but Oh, hey, you made it to the end. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it. If you like this video and want to see more like it, give it a like and maybe subscribe if you haven't already. Until then, we'll see you next time.